Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brothers Craft Time Sharing Hour, a podcast of creative sibling rivalry. I'm your brother host Dan, and I'm joined today, as always, with my brother host Jeff. And Jeff is going to be taking us through a brief tutorial. We have a lovely video that's going to guide us on our journey through the art of making Marx look like a person. Jeff, what do you have for us?
So we had recorded an episode on presidential portraiture and had offered the opinion that Amy Sherald's painting of Michelle Obama did not quite look like the former First Lady. And we thought that we would do a little video presentation on what likeness is. So I took it upon myself to accept that challenge, Dan. I have never drawn our current president until now. And I thought this afternoon I would sit down for about a half hour and pencil through that. So we've sped up the video. It's about 15 minutes. Light pencil sketch of our dear leader, Das Fuhrer Trump. All right, Dan, so I didn't want to just copy a photograph.
I'll pretend like the idea of copying a photograph doesn't cut as deeply as it did. Go ahead.
That's just a shout out for my homie Schmidt. So, does he trace? Yeah. So it was the idea of caricature initially that we were going to roll with, and that exaggerating features is a good way of highlighting, the likeness in a person and to capture that. But as I was getting ready to do the drawing, I realized that there's a spectrum there, right, between caricature and exact photographic likeness, and so I wanted to err more on the side of something that would be a traditional likeness, and mentally just keeping track of those things that we really associate with this particular character. What I'm doing right now in the drawing is just a standard Loomis head. If you're not familiar with the Loomis method, you start with a ball as the center shape of the head, which is actually very similar to what you would do in sculpture. Then you cut off the sides of that ball to make sort of I don't even know what you would call that shape, almost like an olive. And then
delicious.
It is a delicious method for drawing heads. Also, heads are delicious. And if you then begin to draw some construction lines, so you bisect the head down the middle. To get placement of the nose and sort of draw down about where you want the chin to be. You draw the jawline out of the center slice on the side of the head, as I did here. And then there's marks that you make at about 2/3 or a half for the mouth, and then the nose and the eyes. The Loomis method is pretty well documented. I think you can find probably 150 links to it on Pinterest. So anyway, I'm just working in the Loomis method here.
Yeah, so are you already at this point trying to identify and exalt some of the golden ratios that comprise our president's face?
Now, when you say golden ratios, are you referring to skin tone or hair luster, all natural hair luster?
I was thinking more of Russian showers, but yeah.
Sure. Oh, I'm really embarrassed to say I did not see that coming. I didn't realize you were going to go all Steele dossier on me.
Well, neither did those Russian prostitutes.
Boom! This was not what I was expecting.
For those of you who aren't familiar, a golden shower is when you're urinated on by another person. So when I said golden ratio and referenced the prostitutes, that was referring to
it's a pee-pee joke.
The idea that he was PETA. It's a pee-pee joke.
It's a pee-pee joke. As I was going through, ordinarily you would do like a perfect 2/3, a perfect half for some of these construction lines. You can see already here as I'm beginning to add some detail to the nose. I've already fleshed in the chin, and I do mean a fleshy chin.
Very fleshy.
I've added jowls. Even like the marks, one of the first marks that I made around the jaw was to intentionally make it a little wider and fuller and more of an arc, knowing that that our dear leader eats so well and is so jowly. But it's really those things that, like, you know, you start with just this standard sort of blank canvas Loomis head, and then if you just bring in the right little characteristics, right, a jowly jawline, this sort of full chin in its relationship to those magnificent golden jowls, and then just the, you know, bring the eyes in just a little bit, just a little more narrow set. The shape of the nose is really important. That's actually one that that's probably the feature that that at least I was able to catch that I wasn't getting quite right until the end. I'm sure, knowing our relationship, you will find many more faults with me personally.
So, would it be fair to call these eyes piggish? Piggish eyes?
They are a bit piggish.
They're a little bit piggish, kind of beady.
Yeah, they're
so
slitted.
I take your meaning that it's like the same structure for all things. So it's almost like, you know, most people have a living room. It's just some people have a little bit longer curtains than others. And the curtains in this case would be the fleshy folds of his jowls.
I thought you meant pubic hair. I'm sorry. When you said curtains, you lost me for a minute. I was thrown.
That's disgusting. So...
Says the dude who makes jokes about Russians pissing on beds. All right, whatever.
Look, it's sanitary. You know damn well it's sanitary. I like it because it's sterile.
I said clean the sheets. The only way I know how. You
got at least 3 pass-throughs before that becomes toxic. You know this. You know this. Mom taught us well.
I'm curious to know at this point, you know, I'm adding in just sort of a very rough volume of where I think I'm going to.
Oh, right there.
You did the hair.
You did the hair, and I knew it immediately. Right, but up until then, I was like, I don't. You did the hair, nailed it. Have you ever seen those celebrity photos that people alter by taking the eyebrows out? Have you seen those? Because it's
no.
like, oh my God.
I feel like you have far more time on your hand than I do.
That is the most horrendous person I've ever seen. Oh my God. Kill it. Get it away from me. Get it away from me. Oh my God, it's Natalie Portman. It's Natalie Portman. She is gorgeous. They just removed her eyebrows, and it's like I can't even look at the thing. I can't even look at it.
You are ruining our relationship with all of our alopecia viewers and listeners.
What? I'm a bald man. I'm a bald person. I get it. There's something different about the eyebrows, or like when people they'll Photoshop out the teeth. It's the same person. Just take the teeth out, and you're just like, oh God, it's so horrific because it's just so much gum action. All right, this is making me sound like a really shallow and bad person.
Well, I really like the phrase "so much gum action," which is maybe something he was looking for in Russia. You know?
Yeah, I feel like that's something that has that's actually in a
yeah. So to
I'm gonna move on.
So I didn't.
I was quickly
like I said,
editing out everything I was thinking. I was like, nope, not that. It's gonna be recorded. Not that. Moving on.
You're just shuffling through the mental cards. It's funny that like I said, I really didn't want to just trace a photo or replicate a photo or whatever, but I did need some photo references in front of me. Though it would have been interesting to do the mental exercise of like, okay, what do you remember somebody looks like? But I had a few photo references in front of me. None of them that had them in this exact pose or you know, expression or anything like that. But yeah, it's just funny.
That bottom jowl that you just did, the waddle, or is it a waddle?
Yeah, the
we
waddle.
learned a lot of anatomy terms, and I pitched hard for our professor. He said, you know, we've learned the muscles, we've learned the bones and some of the ratios and things like that. And I said, I really think there needs to be a third class. He said there wasn't really a need for it. I said, third class where we actually deal with like fat and age and things like that. Because like you've taught us the substrate, but you haven't taught us like the thing that could go on top of that. And you know, he kind of said you can learn that on your own, which I refuse.
he's like, don't worry, time's a cruel fucking mistress. You'll learn it on your own.
You'll learn it every goddamn day when you look in the mirror. I thought he meant like in 30 years. I didn't think he meant 2.5.
Yeah. Real clear. That dour expression really sells it for me. the mark that I just made there. So as I was saying, I didn't have a specific photo to work from, and I just had like 3 or 4 in front of me that I wanted to, just sort of look at every now and again and adjust the standard head that you would illustrate. That was the exercise. But it was just hilarious to me that as I'm searching images, Donald Trump, just on Google, like 3rd row down, it's just a straight up headshot of Stormy Daniels. I was like, oh god. Oh god.
Yeah, I feel like you've really nailed some of the likenesses. What were the things that you've watched? You've seen this video a few times. This is my first one. What were the things that you think, like, at that point all of a sudden it looks like him? Because for me so far it's the hair, that first sweep of the hair, the waddle, and surprisingly I didn't and not so much the eyes, though I'm sure that does the work, but that ducktail curl of hair at the very back, at the base of his skull, that seemed to do it as well. And I didn't realize how much of a role that played for me.
Yeah, it does play a role. You and I had talked in doing a video of Trump, drawing Trump. You don't want color to do all the work, right? That's sort of a cheap out, in my opinion.
We jokingly said you could just do an orange swipe with a tie or something.
Exactly. Orange thumbprint, red tie.
You could literally just take a picture of your thumb and then like Photoshop a tie on it and be like, yeah, Donald Trump nailed it.
Oh shit! You just described the Instagram post we're gonna do for this episode. Yeah, I think the ducktail does a lot. It's good that I didn't totally miss the boat on the likeness, right? And especially after we talked so much shit about the Michelle Obama painting. But I didn't really want the overt things like the skin tone, the squinty eyes, the weird hair, and the red tie. You don't want that to, like, that doesn't really show your artistic ability, in my opinion, right? Like so many of the cartoons that I read about Trump, that's, if you're going to do a caricature of him, that's all you got to do. You can kind of draw any sort of schlubby old white guy and then just paint him orange and make his hair real fucked up and boom,
Yeah.
And it just seems like an out to me. It's
either going to be Mitch McConnell or it's going to be Donald Trump.
Oh, nice. Yeah, this is the most political post we've ever done, Dan.
Is McConnell the one that people jokingly do like just a turtle?
Yeah, he's a turtle. He's got no chin. So if you think, God, this is such a shallow episode. Well,
literally no chin. It goes from bottom lip to clavicle. Just
so much gum. But I think we were joking about this before. As we were coming up with the conceit for the episode and for this little mini post, and when you're drawing a likeness, or you're trying to draw a character that has a racial or a gender component, like you get into this weird mental place of like, well, no, that'll make them look, insert protected legal class here. Like that's the stereotype I'm going for. I don't know. Don't leave me hanging out on a limb on that one, Dan.
I don't recognize any of these problems that you're addressing. I feel awkward being on the podcast generally with you. I just feel like maybe if anyone has any concerns, they should totally like tweet them at you. Yeah, no, it's like it's funny because like oh God, I'm gonna get myself in trouble here. There are these abuses of aesthetics where they're used as a heuristic. Have I thrown off enough big words that they'll like obfuscate what? Oh, there's another one where I can obfuscate what I actually.
Yeah, just virtue signal the hell out of yourself, would you?
But there's these aesthetics that are abused as a heuristic, a shortcut to knowledge, where we say someone who looks like X is this thing over here, and we call those things misogyny or racism or some kind of xenophobic thing. Like, but we're choosing these aesthetic features, and the really insidious thing about that is that many times the aesthetic features do exist. They're just being it's the misuse of them to imply some sort of like moral quality or rights that should be associated with that. That's the abuse. And so it gets into this tricky ground when doing caricature or any portraiture, because you're aware that you're exalting some of those features, which would, in almost any other context other than depicting aesthetics, would be sort of crass, inappropriate, or perhaps outright immoral. But they are aesthetic features that exist before those sorts of abuses, or at least separate from them. And oftentimes they are what makes a person look the way they do, because we do have our own relationships and commonality, and so like a lot of times when you'll see these tutorials on how to draw women, people will just be like, generally the jaw is more rounded and less angular, and it's a bit shorter and more childlike, and all these sorts of things that even if you're saying it, you're like, oh, that sounds bad. But it's odd when you're doing a portrait. As soon as you make those adjustments, it really does look more.
It just clicks.
It looks more like a woman or more masculine or whatever the thing is, and so it can be really, really almost ethically tricky to do some of these things. And you have to, and I personally, the thing that I'm aware of during that context is like, let me make sure I'm seeing this feature as a part of the person and the way they look, and not some sort of aesthetic that I ascribe to them without seeing it in the person, if that makes sense. Like, I know this thing about them, so I'm going to point to this thing. Like maybe Donald Trump does have a really fabulous nose. Maybe his nose looks a certain way, or like maybe he does have a certain strong man look to him, no matter how much I dislike other qualities. And maybe that needs to be played up in order, like if you just try to make him all marshmallowy, it won't actually look like him. You have to give him certain features.
So we didn't want to take too much time with the episode. Dan, my question for you is how would you grade my likeness, my quick half-hour likeness of Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed a lot of the features. I think there would be a very slim group of people who would not see this as Donald Trump right away. I mean, there's certain nuanced features I think are interesting. You mentioned not doing like the orange or the tie or those sorts of signifiers, and I think there may be something interesting there in terms of caricature or portraiture, that we don't choose the things that could be described in words. If I were to say orange, wears a tie, squinty eyes, people that Donald Trump, like they nailed it. But it's actually the more nuanced things that makes a thing really click into place, like a certain curvature to that waddle that doesn't feel straight down droopy, but it kind of has that still full young old man's look to it. You know what I mean? It's not wrinkled curtains yet. It's kind of somewhere in between, and like those sorts of features that do make or like the certain kick of that ducktail hair, that make it feel more like a person, more like a character of that person. So, I give this a solid C on. Or no, I give it. The best part of that was during the silence, I was just imagining what was going through your head, and it made me so happy. All right, so I think we can agree that was a very strong likeness of Donald Trump, of our dear leader. Was that what you're calling him, our dear leader? Ooh, I should do a portrait of Kim Jong-un.
Oh, fuck.
John?
Do it.
It's not
John.
Because
it's Kim Jong-un, and it's...
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Again, these are both... It's great. It's great because both of these characters they're so easy to caricature. It's so tempting to not go more in the direction of representation.
Just over the top. Well, I think it would be cool if we do it and then we release them in time for their epic meeting.
The big old meetup, yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be cool.
Good stuff.
All right. Yeah, just in time for the mushroom cloud to sweep over the West Coast. It'll be awesome.
Jesus.
Not wrong. So with that, if anyone wants to get a look at this video and the end result, and I do mean the end, where can they reach us at, Jeff?
Yeah, we'll be throwing the video up on YouTube if that's not where you've already seen it. This is our first video post, so we'll see how that shakes out. We're not quite sure how the internet works.
This thing is already just... This isn't an episode for the podcast. I mean, I know this. I'm just restating for other people who might not know this.
Right. No, yeah, for the benefit of others, this is...
just clarify for them.
Right, to clarify for them, this will be released... my plan is that this will be released as an audio episode that you could just listen to. It will also be released as a video podcast that you could watch on your podcast player. It will also be on YouTube as just a standalone video on our YouTube account. It's actually our first video, our inaugural video, Dan.
Can you believe that we actually have had the largest listening and viewing audience in the history of inaugural episodes for videos? It's amazing. It's amazing. I can tell right now the stats are 10 million. 10 million.
Yeah, if you want to reach out to us, we would love to see your likeness of Trump as well, by the way. You can find us on Instagram. Our handle is Sharing Hour. You can also find us on Twitter at Sharing Hour. If you'd like to email us directly, talk to us offline, away from prying eyes, sharinghour@gmail.com. You can find
also, if you would like, you can tweet your drawings at the real Donald Trump. Would be fun. Just a suggestion.
Pretty dope. Yeah, and you can find all of our past episodes. I think this video as well, and all of the show notes and prior links. Good little art history education there on our website, sharinghour.com. Dan, is that all of our internet presence as of this moment?
I think that's all of the ones we want to list. Yes.
Yeah.